All right, hopefully everybody online can hear. If not, send us a chat so that we know you can't hear us. We think you should be able to. We are having video issues though. Wow, everybody is afraid to sit in the front. Next time we get this room set up, the tables are going to start here, and we're going to have 3 rows of them so that everybody has to sit close. I appreciate y'all coming in today. Sorry the weather's kind of gloomy. We don't have a very long agenda. Actually, some of the things I need to go over on the agenda that came up as I was brainstorming and realized there might be some other topics we need to cover. First thing I'd like to get out of the way is unfortunately we're losing one of our key team members. Casey is leaving us and going to another job in Lexington. So Casey's in the back of the room. I just want you all to, if you would, please give her a round of applause for everything she's done. And for her to speak, she said she was more than happy to step up front and give y'all a speech. We hate to lose Casey. She's done a lot for DDSN. We will we'll still be able to move forward and complete the tasks that we need to complete without her. In the meantime, we will be obviously posting that key position and trying to fill it to make sure that we are able to continue to meet your needs as a provider. You can still her last day is the 17th, and so you can still email her email address even after she's gone, because we'll be monitoring her email for a period of time. But ideally, if you would use our financial.tech support email address, it's a shared mailbox. It's financial, not finance, .tech support, one word, at ddsn.sc.gov. That way we have a team of folks that can help meet your needs if you email that email address. And I do think we're doing a decent job of responding to folks that are emailing our shared mailboxes. If you're having issues with that though, or dissatisfied with our response, just let me know. If you need to talk to someone on the phone in the meantime, call Debbie Wilson. Her number is 898-9720. That's 898-9720. If you have to get on the phone in the meantime, so that we can have someone there for you for that if email won't do. I would like to thank the Provider Network for all they're doing to get their financial reports turned in on time. We're having a very good compliance rate. We have a lot of folks that are delinquent turning them in, but there's good reason for most of those happening. We're not trying to be too strict on the due date. Ideally, if you can get it in as close as possible to the month end after the quarter's ended, that'd be great. We do want to run some analysis and be able to be on top of how our provider network is performing. We do have a good many QPLs missing. We have to find out how we're going to go about identifying our QPLs. There's a bunch of them, and trying to ensure we even know who all we should be expecting reports from. That is something I know Casey and her folks have been working on. So if you're a QPL and you haven't turned in your quarterly, if you'll please do that. And basically you just use that link. It's a smart sheet form that populates a database on our side automatically and scores your financials. It gives us some indicators how you're doing just graphically. But if you've lost that link, what I recommend you do is open that link up and save it in your favorites in your browser. But if you've lost that link, let me know. It doesn't change. It'll be the same link every quarter. There was some confusion about a comment I made last meeting that I wanted to clarify, and it related to state benefits. Nothing going on right now affects board's ability or eligibility for the state benefits that they currently have. The issue facing us, and the issue that will be facing you as a provider, is that as we move fee for service, will those fringe benefits be affordable for you to maintain and give you a competitive disadvantage potentially with others that aren't offering such an expensive benefit package? So in no way would we tell you or the state that you're not eligible for those benefits that I'm aware of. But when your fringe rate's 40% and the competitors is 15, and you're trying to operate and compete, that is something y'all may end up reviewing as a local agency, whether you want to continue offering all those benefits or not. It's just a business decision. I mean, businesses every day have to look at what they can afford as far as health insurance, retirement, leave, holidays, all that. So I don't want my point to be taken out of context. I'm just saying that, all gloves are going to be off when you start running an actual for-profit business. You're going to have to start thinking differently and making some different decisions potentially. Because, we're not going to have a DSN board day rate and a QPL day rate. We're going to have a day rate. So just be aware of that. The other issue is HHS has made it abundantly clear to us that setting rates in the way that we've done in the past is not going to be supported much longer. In other words, if we get increases from the state legislature, it's quite likely, and we're still having to look at this and see if there's anything we can do creatively to keep it going, but basically our ability to continue to pass those funds through to the providers for like health insurance increases and state retirement increases is going to be very limited, because what we're doing is, HHS is setting a rate based on a market rate and market conditions, and they're not going to just say, oh, since this happened, we're going to go in and automatically adjust rates. I don't know if you want to say anything to that effect, but I know that seems like the direction the wind's blowing from the meetings we've had. We haven't specifically addressed that. But
I think it's too early to be absolute about it, but we have to worry about people with different structures getting a single rate. When we have a history in this state of boards and QPLs, we got to factor that in. So it's one of those things where it's a confounding factor, but it has to be factored in. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to be done.
I mean, I think the case management and early intervention rate adjustment issues we had are a prime indicator.
It's a clue.
They were like, we're not. You can't just tell us we got to increase rates like this. That's not how it works. So, I think that's a real issue that we all need to be aware of. And I don't know when that'll change, but in this mixed payment model, we've even got to review how we ask for money and how we receive funds and how we distribute funds, because when we get out of the band system and we're getting HHS's rates, we lose a lot of control at that point. So, do anybody have any questions about that? I mean, I think I heard some feedback that people are saying I told y'all that we were going to lose our state benefits, and that's not at all what I tried to convey. Do you have a comment or question?
No, I don't think you said that, but I think the writing is on the wall when we say no longer will we get health insurance increases. We don't factor into respite, the retirement rate. We've got all these factors lining up to why wouldn't DHHS, as you said, want to push out cost, which is expensive, which is retirement, the health insurance package that boards have. So I don't know if Chris knows, I don't think it's like you, but it's the writing is very clear to us, but I think we're standing back and looking at it saying, here's the factors that are lining up. We've got a large insurer, DHHS, that they're going to keep costs down. And we're already having conversations about, do we include all these board built-in costs, and it's almost making us feel like a legacy kind of program, because if that's the case, we need to look at our models. Like you said, that was a good point. You made a good point. It wasn't saying to do this. It was saying, look at your model.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're all hopefully doing is, what's our model now? If it's not a board, the traditional retirement and all that stuff, then what is it? And how do we change it?
Right.
So I think it's a good discussion. It's just scary.
And I don't think it's, right around the corner, but I do think it's out there. And as we move more and more services to fee for service, it'll be a bigger and bigger problem to deal with.
I think, Chris, the other question too is, historically we keep hearing that, that we've always been the fallback, we've been the safety net, yada, yada, yada. That conversation needs to be happening, and it needs to be happening with the legislature right now, because they need to understand we aren't going to be the fallback and we aren't going to be the safety net. There will no longer be a fallback and safety net in the system.
Well, the boards can exist without having these benefits. You look at Babcock Center and some of the other 501c3s, you just reformulate your business as a new entity. That's an alternative. You just close down the government entity and open up a nonprofit. That's just something we're gonna have to look at as a system. There are nonprofits sitting in this room right now that aren't a DSM board governmental entity. So I think from a taxpayer perspective and from Medicaid's perspective, they're going to say, look, that's your choice that you're making. And if you're going to be able to maintain that and remain competitive, then by all means, you do that.
But I guess the question I have is that, is there a difference? I mean, if you're a board, aren't you ultimately mandated to provide services? And as a nonprofit, you're not?
It's not the nonprofit legal, it's that whether you are grandfathered in as a DSM board for your county, there's what, 5 nonprofits, I guess, that fit that bill, and they're not a contract service provider like the qualified providers are. There's some nuances here. I don't have all the answers yet, but if y'all can formulate these as a provider group and pose them to us, I think it's, we're here to advocate for you. We don't want the system breaking down, so
I know, but my
anything.
concern really is if that is the direction that it goes, I can see that some of, and we're not one of them, obviously, but I can see some agencies saying, well, since we're now in the fee-for-service world, it's like anything else. You can then choose who you want to serve and who you don't want to serve, which is then begs the question of the fail-safe. Because if, for instance, one of the things we're thinking about is, let's say we now have this day service program that we're doing fee-for-service for, and we have a requirement now that in order for us to provide services, we require you attendance 5 days a week. The family says, no, we only want 2 days. Well, you're out of luck. So what happens to that family for those 2 days? Who's going to pick that up? And so those are things that I'm a little concerned about.
Right.
How that would change the system. And I don't know the answer to that. I just want to make sure that we're thoughtful about this process, and so that we have those kinds of questions answered. Because I'm suspecting that those are kinds of things that everyone's going to be thinking about as we move in this direction. So it's really not a matter of, I don't even know what the answer would be, but I just want to make sure that we're thinking of those things, that's all.
Because in other systems, whether it's PC services or Medicare services, providers have been able to cherry pick. I mean, it's just, that's what happens, and I mean, we've worked with folks who've gone through every single provider, and there's no provider available. I mean,
Yeah.
we're saying
Well,
that the potential is
it-
systems.
Yeah, in a new fee-for-service world, though, we're hoping that that the rates vary by complication, so that cherry picking comes with funding. The funding is impacted. Right now, you have the same funding regardless of the person's needs, unless you have an outlier, and that promotes folks cherry picking the easy folks because they're able to serve them in a more effective and efficient manner. You were going to say something about the.
Put it this way, everything you said, all this, how do we bring people together with a single rate when you have all this complexity? And I would say in 4 years or 5 years, what you're going to see is probably what every other state has done. The question is getting from here to there. What every other state has done in order to address those very questions is they will have a rate based on the acuity of the consumer. All consumers go through a common assessment thing, SIS, or any number of different ones states have. And so that when you're serving somebody, your rate, I'm looking at a rate sheet here from Oregon. If you're the highest for a day program, supported community activity, the highest rate is $33 an hour. That's for the highest acuity person with the serving ratio of 1.5, average of 1.5 people to a staff, to $15 an hour when it's 6 to 1. So when your person comes to you, all of a sudden the cherry picking thing goes away. And secondly, your actual service is funded based on what you're providing, meaning your community supports, which has different dynamics than your facility-based, has a higher cost structure. That's a level of sophistication that we don't have. We have 5 services with the same rate. So we're looking at what would that do economically? It would encourage it would not encourage us to stretch into higher services with lower ratios. So the system that we're operating creates certain economic realities that you deal with every day. Okay, now we enter into another world where we have different cost structures. My belief, when I look at how HHS works, is we have to have a provider network. You are the provider network. A lot of our provider network has high cost structures. In order to attract you as a provider, we're going to have to meet all these needs in some sort of logical way, and that has to factor into it. So meeting this high structure needs is a windfall for this people over here. I don't know what the answer is, but it has to be factored in, or you're going to find exactly what I'm hearing, which is one of the strengths of the system is having some safety net capability. And how do we meet all these different variables? I don't know the answer, but it all starts with getting the foundational cost under control. And that last little bucket is some level of risk, reward, something in order to compensate you for the realities that you faced and the ways, and we had a conversation at a meeting not too long ago, and it was about adult day health. And I told somebody I'd bring numbers. In fiscal year 17, the system paid $4.4 million to that provider group. This year, we're on track of $7.6 million. Okay, so you see, it's almost doubled in a short amount of time. That's a competitive factor against you for all the reasons you say. They provide more services and transportation and maybe a programming that is different than yours. Okay, if the state wants us to have successful day programs, we've got to staff it and fund it correctly so that we can survive and meet the needs of probably much more challenged people with we need to have lower ratios of consumers. So that's what we're trying to build all this into a model. But at the end of the day, when we get all these factors together and we go over to HHS and they do their math, they have a discretion. If you looked at the Mercer report, minimum range, maximum range, that's a pretty big range in there. They can pick wherever they want, and where they pick is a function of not only our data, but the I call it the qualitative of factors that they have to take into account, which is the structure of our system, the safety net factors. There's a lot of things to be taken account. So I think we have to itemize not only the costs, but all these qualitative factors that we're talking about, so that when we get to the finish line and we're advocating for a rate that makes us healthy. And a healthy rate is one where you can start the year with an understanding that if I have some snow days, event days, something like that, you just don't have such a thin margin that you're just all of a sudden going to start eating into your own equity. And that's the difference. I think we have to factor that in. So I don't know the answers, but we have to factor them in. The waiver case management rate was thrust upon us, and they've done their math. We have control here, so let's build the costs, build those factors, but when we get to the finish line, we cannot attract quality providers into the system if we're going to use not real economic factors that you face every day. So that's the whole goal here. Get the real economic factors, the real ratios, the real world transportation issues, the real world, how many days that you're closed down. There's a lot of people that were closed for weeks because of the flu. And who knows what's coming with the next virus coming. And we're operating in that world today, and we got to build the rates to sustain it. So that's what we have to all agree to, that we understand those things. How we plug them in, we're going to get together rates from other states, and when we send them to you, you're going to see the pattern. The level of detail they drive their rates is very detailed. The acuities is not going to happen like overnight. So when we build our first rate to get us moving, that rate's going to have to be kind of a blended rate. We're going to have to figure out you guys have day programs with different staffing levels, and we're going to have to figure out what those staffing levels are. And then we're going to ask ourselves the big question: are your current staffing levels artificially depressed because you're restrained by the $27? I think that was one of the questions you asked, right?
Right.
I think the answer was 50-50, or more yes than no.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't want to get off tangent. We got, I want to get into the day program stuff, but I want to cover a lot of the others first if I can. But yes, there's a a multitude of staffing decisions that
Right.
that drive
Right.
that answer. So on the benefits point, I just want to make sure that was perfectly clear. Any more questions as it relates to benefits? We can circle back around. I just want to get through the rest of the agenda because I don't want to get to the end of this and we haven't covered these other items. Anything else? Everybody's asking about outliers. I wish I had an answer for you. Rufus and his team and I are trying to finalize this. I do want to throw out a couple points. One is, if rejustifications are up and you're wondering what to do, just hold off. We're not taking your money. We're not saying you didn't turn in your justification, therefore your funds are pulled. Our intent is to develop a very good tool, and we run everybody back through it and end up with a very defensible, transparent answer that we can stand before a group and say, this is why funding decisions were made the way they were made. So the issue is we're really trying to get it right. We're trying not to hurry through this. We're kind of stuck on the programmatic review side right now as far as what that's going to look like. There's a lot of options out there in regards to assessments and who would do those assessments, whether we're even going to use the assessments or not. So I realize everybody's getting impatient. I apologize. But if you have outlier funds, don't worry about it at this point. We're not going to retro it back or anything like that. Now, your Band Bs, we will. When we get around to that, which I need to do soon because we did that in July last year and really made a lot of people angry, we need to go ahead and get that done sooner than later because there are some funding issues there where folks have passed away or, maybe you need additional funding either on some of those. But the Band Bs, we need to try and do something soon on the existing outliers to review those. But the programmatic review and the fiscal review are going to be much more thorough. It's not going to be just a matter of telling a story anymore. It's going to be, we're going to need staffing patterns. We might ask for payroll records for a history of time to review staffing levels. If, let's say, your staffing isn't where you need it to be, but part of the reason you're asking for the outliers to add the staffing, then we need to be able to answer that and project that. So there's a lot that goes into this just to make sure we get it right. And I apologize profusely for it being so delinquent. I would be glad to field any questions y'all have on that. I don't have the answers yet. I just can tell you that we're trying hard as we can to get a good system in place. Tyler, did you have a question? You look like you're about to say something.
So the funding that once you get the system in place, if you like, how much funding do you have to allocate? And two part of that is the money that is pulled back from the Bs through the reconciliation process, like you did in July, which you do again. Is that reallocated to outliers or is it pulled back to DSN's general fund? How's that work?
Our intent is to make that self-perpetuating fund, so funds are reinvested, if you will. Currently, we have no capacity to put any money in outliers. We're meeting with Medicaid quite often right now, trying to get our fiscal situation resolved here. I think most of y'all know now, but I didn't even know as a finance director and a consultant for years and years, we don't get zero additional money for outliers, none. So if we give you a, 160 grand to serve somebody, we're still stuck getting 180. It's not 187.66 a day anymore, but
196.
So we lose all that, and so part of our process too, as we go through our fee for service model and looking at our rates, is to be able to have a distinct residential rate that allows us to bill a higher level to Medicaid. We inherited this. We've got two residential rates. We got one for everything but SLP1, and then we got a SLP1 rate. So, it's a mess. It's hard to manage for sure. Yes, ma'am.
Here's a full of money.
What's that?
Is there money to allocate? I mean, is it?
Currently, we don't have any.
That's what I thought. Okay, so we're going to go this process just to get a letter saying I have no money? Or we
No.
There's money in the system. What he's saying recirculate whatever's in the system now,
Right.
keep it and recirculate that money.
Okay. So we don't know how much that is though. Right.
It's $7.5 million
7.5.
is what we're paying in outliers right now.
Okay. That's not a new one, that's just currently not already out.
And that's 100% state dollars, which is just right out of the back pocket.
So, and I expect that.
It hurts.
Yeah, I get that. It's just, for
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason we asked for them too, so.
I understand.
System, but I just wondered what we're talking about here. We're going through this, I get the process, I like that you guys will do diligence of that, but, you know, I want to get to a place where we're doing another pullback whenever we do that this fiscal year, and then it's another year of pullback with no more outlets. Because I get the reconciliation of these, I get that, I really do the process, I have no problem with that. But we're gonna pull back, we should be able to get back too.
Right.
We're out here dying on the vine too, so.
Yeah, we reinvested the majority of the money that was pulled back in that band. Like, we turned around and pushed money out too. We just couldn't fully fund. If we fully funded all the requests, we would have only funded like 10 of them. And so I had to come up with a mechanism to share the wealth, which is going to be part of our review process as well, is how do we make it not an all or nothing for boards? You know, is there a way to make this same money? You know, if I give you 80,000, that's a big chunk of that money. And let's say there's 10 other people that have existing needs that are legitimate. How do I pick Lauren's out as the 80,000 winner? And I tell all these other 10 boards, sorry, I got nothing for you. So we've got to. All right, well, let me say I give it all to Thrive. And I tell Jason I got nothing.
More needs than money. I get asking how much you got, and then,
Right.
you know, how you go about it.
Right. Michelle?
Just a real quick, just a process comment. While we're in this process, could you just let the Lion know, or somebody from DSN let the Lion know, so if they come out and do QA reviews, they're not asking for current packets? Or if my outlier was due for renewal in February.
I didn't even know they looked at that.
They asked for that information, and it's gonna be part of the QA, so
Is that
somebody
what-
needs to communicate with them.
We'll make sure they're aware.
Make
Yeah.
sure that happens.
Yeah. We also need to review whether we need them doing that.
We don't.
I know are y'all aware that we're reviewing the Alliant indicators and trying to make sure we're measuring things that matter? We're trying to go through and we know whether you turned in the packet or not. Why do I need them telling me whether you did it? So,
They want to see that we've done the process, that's
Right.
part of the thing. So until July, when new standards come out, if they.
I got that. But if I don't know that myself already,
It's on the block.
anyways. All right. Any other questions on outliers? And Rufus, did you want to say anything about that? Because I know you're taking a lot of the heat, and so is John, as far as.
Well, and we're not really taking heat, but they're legitimate questions and providers have legitimate needs. So I just think we need to just double our efforts the best we can in the coming weeks to solidify a process so that we can go ahead and at least start receiving submissions in and reallocating the wealth.
John, did you want to say anything? Except please get it fixed quick. All right. The final thing I had, and then we'll jump into the main. Well, no, now I've got two other topics actually on the agenda. We have our April 1st training coming up. It's less than a month away. We have a good many registrations. We only have 2 audit firms signed up. I do recommend you ask your auditor to attend this, just so that if they can. I know it's tax season. One of the reasons I picked the first is because it's not the 15th, which is the due date, or 16th, whatever it is these days. I know that varies. But I really would ask you to ask them to come so that they hear what you're hearing and that y'all can work collaboratively on the things that are going to be gone over with Melissa Glasso coming. So I appreciate y'all signing up. We are going to do a lunch. It's only a $10 fee, but that's to pay for snacks in the lunch. So we also offered a Skype option if you want to Skype in. I just realize it's you may not get as much out of it if you're not here in person, but that is going to be an option. We're also going to try to record it, and if you can't attend, we're going to share the handouts as well. So those will be available. Any questions on the April training? If you don't have the sign-up link, if you'll reach out to Casey while she's still here and ask her to send you the survey link, she can send that to you so you can get registered. Melissa's great, by the way. Y'all will really like her, I think. If you're thinking it's going to be a bunch of dry material, you're right about that. But she is really good at presenting it in a manner that isn't a snooze fest. Now I'm going to to the actual agenda. Ben and Rufus, speak briefly about our SLP1 project that we're currently working on. So if one of you guys would take the lead on that.
We'll tag team it. This is just for awareness. So this for CFOs and also CEOs and executive directors. This month, you'll receive some reporting regarding service unit reporting, RESHAB and SLP1 settings. And that's going to be via your individual service record or ISR. You know, one of the things that we're doing is, like Chris said, you know, Pat, you know, we're analyzing everything. And so for looking at our expenses and the reimbursements that we receive for services rendered to this group over the past couple of fiscal years, the amount that we've paid out is significantly greater than the amount that we're able to recapture from Health and Human Services. So we're just going to give you some reporting to help you, one, realize where you stand on that spectrum, but also, you might think of like it's more, and so that's coming out this month. The other piece relates to automation.
Yeah, and so we've been looking at the whole process for SLP1, which spits out the paper logs, and then you gotta fill out the paper logs, and you gotta mail it in. And frankly, you know, last time I checked the calendar, we're a little bit past that in 2020. So we're gonna hope, the plan is to do similar to what we did with individual employment, actually, where we'll be doing an ISP and TheraP, and the staff of SLP1s can be doing their time in and out in TheraP. That's the concept. We'll see how it executes. We'll get some feedback from a few providers, may even test it on one or two first. But the idea is that TheraP can interface directly with our billing system and dump it into that file, and we can bill straight that way. At the very least, we'll be able to run a report here and bill without you guys having to send stuff in.
And you guys will have surveillance opportunities too at the local level, because right now, with it being the paper process, you guys have no surveillance capabilities because it's paper. And so this is pretty much a process enhancements on two fronts. One, to provide you, again, data or metrics, you know, as we talk about moving or transitioning to a fee-for-service basis for all of our service lines or many of our service lines, we'll look at the opportunities to, you know, increase productivity. And then also by doing that, you increase engagement with the folks that you serve. But so hopefully you'll enjoy the reporting. Right now, like I said, in terms of the analysis that we've conducted, we're definitely, being DDSN, we're not, you know, recouping a reimbursement from Health and Human Services to the extent that really makes us whole. You know, right now, I guess in 18 and 19, we paid out about $5.2 million to providers just for this one service line. And for those 2 fiscal years, what we were able to recapture from Health and Human Services is about half of that. Okay. And we keep in mind too that for boards, you receive a capitated payment. And so Ben was able to extract the non-residential costs out so that we're comparing apples to apples. And then the other piece is you know, we have about 18 individuals, at least for this fiscal year, and we'll have to go back and put those figures in for the previous fiscal years that are 100% state funded. And so that's about 7% of the folks that receive SLP1 services. So we know we don't have reimbursement for those individuals. So when you look at your reporting, it may be skewed. So we'll try, we'll clean up our reporting. So when you get it, you'll have, you know, actual apples and apples comparison.
Right, and a lot of it, unlike with, you know, we've kind of done similar things in the past with case management and EI, but with the SLP1, costs are going to vary greatly by, you know, your own agencies and how many consumers you're serving and the locations and staffing patterns. So it's really going to be up to you guys. We'll send you kind of the revenue that you would get if we were fee for service, but you're really going to have to dive into your costs for that program. Because, you know, your revenue may be much less than what the band payment is, but that revenue may be in effect enough to float that program if it's a very small program or something like that. So.
Do you anticipate any standards being revised with that?
Yeah, I think we'll have to. The answer is yes. We're looking at standards and indicators across the board, and so we'll delve into the quality management. But right now, we want this to be a longitudinal process so that we have awareness, because this is a real problem for us. And the other piece tied to the service unit reporting, a lot of you know, you guys are faced with a lot, but it's really important, you know, that you submit your individual service records, you know, promptly and on time, so that we can recoup our money. And so we have and some of you I've called personally to let you know that you're, a few months in the rears. We paid you, particularly, for the boards, because you get a capitated prospective payment. We paid you, but you haven't submitted your logs in 1 or more months. And so it's really imperative that we get a little bit more timely in that, because that affects our cash flow.
Well, I think it's important as a provider that you start using the PAT term, spring practice. You have an opportunity to start practicing and perfecting things now while you still have some protection in the capital funding system. So behind all this, not only are you helping us and helping us potentially have money for outliers and other funding needs, but you're also starting to practice, get your systems in place, getting your monitorship set up, so that when we do turn the flip the switch on fee for services, these things happen. You've already got good systems in place to monitor, because that's going to be your revenue. If you're late and you're 2 months behind in the future, we're not going to care, because if you got the cash, you can wait a year if you want, because Medicaid allows you to wait 12 months. But right now, that impacts us directly. But the carrot is that you guys will get to help yourselves as you start to work out those systems internal.
So, yeah, Jason.
I hate to admit this, but I'm not quite sure what generates, is guidance on a unit? Like what all could be billed in a unit for SLP 1? I want to make sure I have that right as I.
Well, it's a unit of service. One unit equals 1 hour. It's a form of res hab, so it's, so it should be based on your training, so it's going to be individualized, because that's an individualized support.
So I guess I was trying to make sure I understood it, because I think some of it is like, because I'll start working, I heard this was coming, we'll start working with our folks, and I'm not sure they're giving themselves credit for all the things that.
That's what we're finding.
That's exactly
what we're
If we
finding.
could give out some, you guys did this with Job Coach, it helped a lot. These are some things to think about that are billable activities that make sure you give some credit for. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Most recent Job Coach was real helpful. I could give it to my job coach and say, look, you did this, make sure you get credit. I was wanting to do something like that for this.
Yeah.
Or they already exist, I just need to go.
Yeah. Yep, we can do that.
I don't know.
Well, it's part of res hab, it's part of the residential habilitative standards.
Clearly, but we'll put something together.
So what is the unit rate per hour?
63.34.
All right, anything else in SLP1, fellas? No?
Any questions from you guys?
This is rolling out, right?
We'll roll out
We'll start reporting on
this month.
the pair side of it. Will probably be this spring, early summer.
Yeah.
We've already done this before with other programs, so it's a simpler process. So we may decide to pilot it, because it lends itself very easily to piloting. So we'll probably pilot with the board in the pilot or something first, and then go from there.
How long do you anticipate spring training lasting?
This is longitudinal, so it's going to go in. It's not going to be this fiscal year. It won't be next fiscal year.
Go ahead, Brad.
I think that's a fair statement.
At least a couple of years.
I would say at least a couple of years.
Yep.
Rest of this year, next year. But it's a lot of it back to the billing habits. I agree with you. I think there's billable stuff left on the floor just because we really haven't focused on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a much better starting position, just to rough that. Like it was 50, when you take out some of the state funds, you might be at like 60% of your billing now. So I think the gap is not as big but that's money we don't have. It's money we don't have for outlaws. So that's, if we start doing it now, we're going to increase revenue for the system.
On the flip side, the other thing to keep in mind, thank you, Lord, for pointing this out, is there is an authorization for this service. So make sure you don't exceed the authorization. Right.
So that's a forced cap.
Oh,
It's not really forced, it's different for every person, so it's an assessed need about how much residential have a person needs in SLP 1. If
In an
you find,
8-hour
once you start doing
cap.
this, that you need more, you can request more hours. It's just that you can't just go out, like we had this with job coach at one point where there was an authorization for job coaching and people were just documenting all kinds of stuff that was more than what was on the authorization. I just want to make sure that you understand it, that the two are linked together.
No, actually, I didn't know that, so thank you.
And we may get into some of the quality aspects in the quality management meeting, but, and we'll be open to input as we move along this process. So,
All right.
thank you.
Second thing on the agenda, we're only on number 2. How you like that? All those things that we went over, I didn't have listed. Sorry about that. The audit directives, they both have been revised. As you probably know, we have 2 different ones, one for DSN boards and grandfathered DSN boards. Terminology I inherited in that directive, right, Kevin? And then QPL, contracted service providers, 7506. Both of those are out for public comment currently. We have 1 day left on the DSN board one to comment on it. We're presenting it to the Finance Committee for final approval from them and then submission to the Commission tomorrow evening. So if you have any comments, get those in. The QPL one, contract service provider one, is March 11th. So you still have about a week left on that one. So if you do have any comments, get those in. Both of those will go to the Commission for approval at the March meeting.
Just ask a question on that.
Yes.
As a former auditor, do you anticipate the changes made increasing costs?
I wanted to thank you for bringing that up because that was one of the reasons I added this, and I forgot to mention it. So, we took a lot of what I would call non-value oriented tasks and procedures out and added in value added types of things. There is a lift the very first year 1, in implementing this directive as we move a lot of things that were done in the standard financial statement audit area into the AUP or agreed upon procedures area. What I know for a fact is, and this is even with auditors, I know a lot of y'all have a hard time believing that auditors don't always do everything they're supposed to do, but trust me, in the financial statement area, all these things that are now in the agreed upon procedures area always were supposed to be done by your auditor for years and years and years. Procurement policy, procurement testing, cost allocation review, what are some of the other ones? The key staff testing for executive director and key staff spending. All that's been around for years and years and years. The issue is there was no reporting required to us unless they found something. Well, I think that spread was a lot of folks just saying, we won't do it. They'll never know. We'll just act like we did it, and not worry about it. For moving it to the agreed upon procedure side, again, they should already be doing all this. They do have a reporting obligation now, regardless, to even say there was nothing found. They could still not do anything and say they didn't find anything, but now I'd at least have an assertion from them in writing as we go out and start looking at their files, because we're allowed to do that. That's part of what DDSN's responsibility and access is to your auditor's audit work papers. Something that haven't been done here in a long, long time, but it is something that we're going to be looking at. So our intent is to make sure that your auditor's doing their job. And so that is a first year as people ramp up their audit and draft the new template and get their wording the way they want it in that letter. There's also a couple new schedules. The schedules, if they're like any auditors I've ever worked with, they either do them in Excel or in some type of audit report writing package. It's a 1-year formatting and writing effort. After that, it just auto-populates and you just have to monitor it for changes. So again, that's a 1 year, like the room and board calculation. Okay, the way my firm did that, we had a program and we wrote the schedule and it auto-populated that schedule every year. We would just have to write it once. And then of course, as things change, if you had a new house or added new accounts or whatever, we'd have to address it for that. So personally, I don't think it's material. Your auditor may not share in that, especially if they feel that now they have to do more work than they've ever done before. Your response as a board should be, wait a minute, let's pull out the fiscal year 19 directive and let's go over what's new here. And if they admit that, well, they weren't really doing that, then that's an issue you got with your auditor, in my opinion, that you say, look, you put in every audit report that you complied with this audit directive. They're required to say that positively. Well, we complied with 27504 DD, dated whatever. And so my gut feel is no, it should not be. They might want to hit you for a small 1 year first time cost, but I would not expect it to be significant. If y'all find differently, I would like to hear about it because, and I'd be glad to talk to the auditor too and try and gain an understanding, because if I were given that directive, basically when I approached it, I looked at it as though if I had gotten the directive as an auditor, number one, all I'm doing is reporting on what I've always done. Secondarily, it would take me maybe an hour or two to write these schedules. And third, my relationship with my clients are such that I'm not going to bill them for some little tiny add-on for 1 year. So I would have just ate it, just like a lot of the other things that we've had to do over the years.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that we're going to see a very large increase in our costs. And from your perspective, you may not, because these are the procedures that you have been doing. So when you were on it, this is what you did, would have seen an increase, but there are some things that are specifically stated in here that have to be done, where there could possibly be other ways to do it that our auditors are doing it more efficient. For instance, the making sure that all of the staff are making the direct support staff are making $13. I think in here you had that you need to go in and test 2 payroll periods to ensure that. Well, I know our auditors just go in and they get an annualized, these are our regular hours, these are our overtime hours, this is the dump number. It's a very quick, here's the rate, here's the hours, boom, it's done. They don't have to go in and do all of that testing for each pay period. Another thing was the, I think there was something that was added, and maybe it wasn't added, maybe it was just the way it's worded, for the personal property inventory. It actually said that you needed to ensure that it was as stated, which leads me to believe that means going out there and looking at the TV or whatever it is and making sure it has the right serial number that ties to the property. That's gonna be a huge cost if they are responsible.
Yeah, no, that's not our intent. Can you send in comments off the website? Yeah. Kevin and I huddled up and went over the guidance he had given auditors when anytime they would call and ask, and I also reflected on what I was told when I called and asked, and that's the process that internal audit had recommended, was that the pay period be looked at. The inventory is more of a make sure it's on the inventory listing.
Exactly, and that's what they're doing.
So
there's that other sentence in there that sort of leads it to believe they have to go in there.
Yeah, so if you'll get us comments like that, we're not intending to create the workload, and we can give alternative. Kevin, I thought we even put something in there, like, you may not remember though, that there's alternative procedures they could use outside the 2 pay periods. I thought we added wording like that in there.
Specifically, like when we had it, that was just one way to do it. I mean, we don't want to prescribe to, we take for granted these are licensed practitioners, although when you see some of the sample sizes, sometimes you question that. So, but, I don't want to sit there and tell somebody how to do their job, and it isn't a fluctuating agency. What we want is whatever that mandate is, that how they meet it is sort of up to their professional discretion.
Except that upon past reviews, that you've given me some examples of some audit quality issues where, a board may have 200 residential consumers and all they did was sample 8 people in ICF. That's not a representative sample. That's not audit quality whatsoever. So there are some things like that where we're trying to get some accountability to make sure that auditors, some of it too is education of the auditor. We're so unique of an industry that they may not even understand the nuances of the different things. And so we're forcing them into acknowledging that, hey, yeah, we do have all these different residential programs out there, and how do we make sure we hit them all, or a share of them, some this year, some next year, just something. You can't audit just ICF files 5 years in a row.
No, I agree.
So.
I agree there are some things that probably need more work. But the directive, I would feel, is like, these are the things that we need
Okay.
it is.
If you'll give us the comments, we'll be glad to tweak some of that. Because to Kevin's point, they are professionals. And we may be able to loosen some of it up as we get out the gate. It's just that we have such lack of quality right now that I'm seeing, that I'm aware of, that we're trying to take a step towards increasing it. And once we get there, maybe we can start backing off some going forward. Any other questions on the audit directives? There is one other point. We have a obligation with Medicaid. We have an administrative contract with them over BabyNet that requires us to do quality testing over Medicaid payments, even though they go through bridges. So if you're a QPL, it is specified in the QPL directive that when you look at the $250,000 in revenues, that does include your BabyNet billings as well, because we are on the hook. All they do is pay things. They don't look at anything to look for quality. So that's on us. So that's part of our quality process, is the agreed upon procedures. So any question on that? All right. So then day program. Did everybody get the survey results? Sorry it was so small. I was trying to figure out a way to present this where you could read it. I haven't really had time to digest everything. We met on the 4th, and I got the survey out on the 14th. Then we had it due on the 21st. And I'm still getting surveys. I've gotten even more survey results since this was printed and given to you. And I'm still getting staffing recaps turned in as well. So we're still getting back data, so I don't have a whole lot that I can share from that at this point other than what I've already given you. Once we accumulate all the staffing information, our intent is to, redact the unique provider data out of that and try to share it in some fashion so that y'all can see how you measure up and, see what the state looks like as we go through this process. And I did want to explain, so we're starting with staffing. We're really looking at direct care and the supervision of that particular program, not administrative functions like quality assurance, maintenance, admin, and things of that nature in this particular phase. So we got to simplify this. If we try and tackle this thing all in one fell swoop, I think we'll all be very stressed out. So we're trying to take bite-sized pieces. Staffing being the biggest dollar and cost with Fringe, I felt like that was a good place to start. It's also the one that we're going to have the most probably disagreements and the biggest adjustment that we're going to have to make as far as rate setting and coming up with these tiers and community versus facility based and all these issues. So anyways, we're starting with staffing. What I'd like y'all to do though is start thinking about, I'm kind of working my way down the income statement. So I'm looking at personnel and Fringe first. If you look at your audit report, you'll know contractual services and supplies are next. So if you can start kind of visualizing and thinking about that, because that'll be the next, once we get through this, or before we finish this, we need to start that process, but we need to start building that information out too. When you see the statewide information, when Pat shares it, they've got all kinds of like, cost per consumer assumptions for supplies and, different things like that. So we're going to have to develop all those assumptions. And then we got to get into, your fixed charges, your depreciation and facility and fleet needs, and then of course allocations. So that's kind of the process that I envision, and it's probably going to be a fairly long-term process based on, I thought originally it might be 3 or 4 months, but it might be longer than that. Let's see, Ben and you and some other folks are gathering, and Susan, y'all are gathering statewide type information, looking at standards, looking at different things from other states so that we'll have that available. And I think Pat stated that we're going to share that information as we get it. We'll distribute it so that you'll have it. Also, make sure you familiarize yourself with the mentor information. I realize there's some missing pages at what we sent out, but we don't have them either. I don't know why they're not in our copy or the FOIA copy that got sent out. But it was, some folks asked us, hey, this is missing. And I'm like, hold on, let me look at mine. And I went and asked Pat, and he's like, yeah, I don't have it either. So I don't know what's going on there. If there are relevant pages that you feel are really important, let me know, and we'll try and get them from HHS, because we don't have them either. And then, Jason, did y'all decide kind of how y'all want to approach this from a work group perspective? Because I think trying to get this big group together, are there any recommendations on having breakout groups so that maybe we can even meet in the middle of these big monthly meetings with a smaller group and start moving the ball more than 1 month at a time, maybe every 2 or...
We have not discussed it, but off the cuff, and I know she's here, so I would look to Holly. Holly's over our finance sub-work group. And
Okay.
And I know they're doing some work already.
We're meeting once a week right now to talk about it.
So that would be the group I would lean on, but I do not have an official.
If you're... Pat, step in if you don't agree with this, because we haven't talked about some of this. I'm just espousing.
I did that too, so that's good.
I think we're going to make more progress if we can get a group that represents the bigger group together more frequently, and then share and bounce things off of folks in the bigger group. So if y'all could somehow figure out how y'all want to be represented, I mean, if you have a specific interest in this and you don't feel good that somebody's going to represent your particular interest, then by all means, we would not want to exclude you. But I just think a smaller group meeting more frequently would help us move this faster and be more agile. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I do, because when I get back to my office, I'll send this out to you and you send that to the group, because we have 5 or 6 recent cost studies and payment system changes with their program. And when you look at them all, you'll see the pattern. They break down the components. And certainly the most substantive component and the most important component is the staffing levels based on services. And that is a judgment. But when you look at other states, you can see what they use for these. So there's a benchmark. But then you get the other components. You get down, we have to have a group on, we have to establish an attendance rate.